Welcome to Talking Buffalo, featuring conversations with guests from around the world of sports, media, pop culture, and all things Buffalo, with your host, Patrick Moran.
All right, what is going on, everybody? How you doing? Welcome to another episode of Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo sports talk and more. My name is Patrick Moran. Thank you very much, as always, for locking in, whether you're watching, whether you're listening, following, subscribing. I appreciate you all very, very much. This is our Tuesday episode. Typically, I actually record this relatively early on Mondays for Tuesday, but as I record it, it's so late in the night, it practically is Tuesday. In fact, usually the YouTube version goes up the night before, but that'll actually be going out here along with the audio on Tuesday morning. Anyway, we're going to talk some Buffalo Sabres today. And I know, a lot of people are getting itching for some Bills talk, but I mean, quite frankly, there's just not a lot, not anything going on with the Buffalo Bills. That's going to change soon, obviously. But, I say it from time to time. This is not talking Bills. This is talking Buffalo. And there's been a lot of Sabre stuff going on, good and bad. We're going to kind of react to some of that today. Won't be a very long episode. I will say I initially had a hockey-related guest booked for Monday, but something came up and that fell through. But as they say, the show's got to go on, and I got an awful lot of takes when it comes to the Buffalo Sabres, which we're going to dive to just here in a minute. Real quick, though, before we get going, a couple things on the football side. Props to my guy, Bruce Nolan. Bruce Nolan, one of the absolute best Buffalo Bills podcasters and content creators out there. He was part of the Buffalo Rumblings Network. Unfortunately, I'll know a few months ago that came to an end. Vox Media, who ran all the SB Nation podcasts, they dropped the Buffalo Rumblings series of podcasts. So been waiting for a while to see what Bruce is going to do next. And I'm pretty pumped to say, and I wanted to wait until he made this official on his social media, but the Bruce exclusive is coming back. In fact, it's coming back starting this week on Thursday. So if you have not yet subscribed, he's got a brand new feed. So I know you haven't subscribed. Go to Spotify or Apple and just simply type in the Bruce exclusive and make sure that you are subscribed and that you're following that. Again, Bruce is absolutely dynamic. One of the most intelligent, charismatic Bills content creators out there. I talked to him and I'm going to have him on the show to talk some Bills and talk about his, well, I don't want to say new show, but his rebranded show. So looking forward to doing that. Also, on Friday, we are going to have live from Imperial Pizza. While I'm taping it live, it's not actually airing live, but live from Imperial anyway. Carl Jones, who is the brand new sports reporter and anchor over at Channel 4. He came over from Rochester. I'm going to be sitting down with him at Imperial, and we'll spend that episode getting to know a lot more about Carl, his life, and his career before we ultimately dive into some Buffalo Bills talk. And like I said, training camp is right around the corner. I can promise you, I'm really, really excited to really dive into some more Buffalo Bills stuff real soon. In fact, on tomorrow's episode, our weekly Piebag episode, there's plenty of Buffalo Bills related questions and takes that we'll be getting to. But as for today, man, today is pretty much about the Buffalo Sabres, the NHL. NHL free agency officially kicked off at noon on Monday, which is kind of wild, man. I used to think the NFL was crazy in terms of how quick deals came together. There'd be a couple deals. Free agency starts at 4:00, and by 4:05, and I'm even going back years, not just now, because they got the tampering period, and deals get done days before free agency even begins. Technically, that's not supposed to be the case with hockey, but my point is, it most definitely is, because within 3 hours, maybe for all intents and purposes, NHL free agency was over by 3-4 o'clock on Monday afternoon. Just an absolute wild day around the NHL. Not so much for the Buffalo Sabres. Which, by the way, this Monday was a pretty ominous anniversary for the organization. It was Black Sunday, 17 years ago today, or yesterday when you're hearing this now. The Sabres lost both Danny Briere and Chris Drury to free agency. And with that came an end of an era. Now, truth be told, that team, that organization actually held on for a little bit. When they lost Briere and Drury, they missed the playoffs those first 2 years, but then they actually made the playoffs the following 2 years, 3 and 4, post Chris Drury and Danny Briere. They made the playoffs 2 straight times. They lost both times in the first round, and that was it. They vanished from the playoff scene to this day as we're recording this. And the way things look right now, it might be a long time before that streak comes to an end. So another thing too, look, I know these people are making a living, and I know that their job is to be positive. They are literally team employees and team officials. But man, oh man, during the peak of Monday, we'll say frustration, and that might be putting it mildly for some anyway, things going on around the league and people anxiously waiting a big move from the Buffalo Sabres. They made moves, but the big one never came. Anyway, their social media department puts out a tweet talking about the Sabres home opener this year, which is October 10th, Thursday night against the LA Kings. And I'm like, guys, girls, whoever's putting it out there, read the room, man. No one is worse, it seems to me, than Buffalo Sabres social media. Like, the timing of some of the stuff that they put out is just, man, it's unbelievable. Anyway, today, and again, I'm kind of going off the cuff here a little bit, by the way. I got a couple, little notes jotted down, a general outline, but I'm really kind of winging this, no pun intended, because like I said, I'm doing a solo. Wasn't expecting to go solo today, but here we are. Look, for me today with the Buffalo Sabres, it took me back to a time of being a Buffalo Bills fan around 2006, 2007, 2008, around that portion of the Bills drought, which the Sabres are far deeper into their drought than the Bills were during that time. But during that time with the Buffalo Bills, it was just painstakingly, glaringly obvious that nobody wanted to come play for the Buffalo Bills. And they'd get like serviceable at best starters like Derek Dockery or Langston Walker to sign as free agents. And they did that because they paid them an absurd amount of money. Like, that was the only way, even relatively, like I said, serviceable starter, maybe a little bit better than that in case of Derek Dockery, because he's pretty good with Washington. But people just didn't want to come here, and that's quite literally what it's a product of. No one wants to come play for Buffalo unless they're getting like negligently overpaid. Just not good. And it's truly, for me, and I don't know how you feel, and maybe I'm overreacting. I feel like I'm calmed down a little bit. If you've been following my tweets on Monday, I've been pretty ramped up and fired up for most of the day, but I feel like I'm a little bit more mellow right now, a little more calm as we're recording this podcast. And truly, man, honest to God, it is fascinating to me at this point how pathetic the Buffalo Sabres organization is. I've said it before. I've said it many times. I did an entire episode on this all the way back in February. This is not something new that I'm just saying today. This is not a knee-jerk reaction to how I feel the last handful of days have transpired for the Sabres, because I've been pounding this for a while now. I truly, truly think the Buffalo Sabres right now are the worst organization in all of major sports. All of them. And that's especially not just it's not just about the drought. I mean, it's largely about the drought. 13 years, an NHL record, tied with the New York Jets for the longest sports drought of anybody in any major pro sport right now. That's obviously a big factor, but it's so much more than that. It's the lack of fan confidence. It's just bad decision after bad decision. And maybe more than any of that, it's the fact that nobody wants to come play in Buffalo. You know who wants to come play in Buffalo? Just like it used to be with the Bills during their drought. I'll tell you who wants to come to Buffalo. A player that no one else wants, a cast off. So it's either you're going to come to Buffalo to keep your career going, or you're going to come to Buffalo and try to play well and springboard that into a contract so you can go play somewhere else, or you're selling out. You are going to get so much more money to go play in Buffalo than you'll get anywhere else, that you would be doing a disservice to your family to turn down that money. That's what it is. Those are the only types of people that want to come to Buffalo. That's it right now. Now, some people can't control it. And those are the people that are getting drafted over the last handful of years by the Sabres. They're stuck. They're stuck here. And I'm sorry to make it sound so doom and gloom, but that's what it is. That's what it is. And again, I did an entire episode on this all the way back in February. I will die on this hill right now. I think the Buffalo Sabres are the stinky armpit of pro sports. And I mean it. And I don't, unless, if you're a suffering Oakland A's fan and they're moving, so they shouldn't even be counted in this much longer. But if you're not an Oakland A's fan, I don't even want to hear an argument from anybody because there's none to be made. Now, the Jets have not made the playoffs in 13 years, but they've had some pretty good teams. And still to this day, it's the New York Jets. People still want to go to New York, even if they're losing. People still want to go there. Ain't nobody want to come to Buffalo and play for the Sabres right now. Nobody. And again, I'll listen to the argument if you're an A's fan, but you want to talk about on-field recent success? Hey, the Oakland A's made the playoffs like 3 straight years, as recently as 2021 or 2020. So I think this is the worst organization in sports. And I'm going to die on that hill until they prove otherwise. Lots of players coming in now. Lots of players going. And I got to tell you, I'm really bothered by the Jeff Skinner buyout now. And I don't want to be a hypocrite because I was kind of pro Jeff Skinner buyout. I'm not going to play him today, but I've replayed several clips on this show of myself and Tone Pucks where Tone has really railed on Jeff Skinner. And to Tone Pucks' credit, he was saying that Jeff Skinner was on his way out, that he was going to get bought out months ago before Mike Harrington or Lance Lazowski or Joe Yerdon, Matt Fairburn, pretty much any of the very credible, excellent Buffalo Sabres journalists. They were not almost barely even acknowledging that as something that could happen. And Tone Pucks was pounding that table for months. So credit to him, but anyway, but that's not what this is about. My point is this. I was on board with the Jeff Skinner buyout. I truly, truly was. I'm fine with losing a player. So let's be clear. I think Jeff Skinner is declining. And if Jeff Skinner's not scoring goals, he's useless. I get that. I do. And I was fine losing the player. But I thought when it became apparent that when Kevin Adams didn't deny it last week, the buyout, kind of like one of those wait and see, you knew the writing was on the wall. Jeff Skinner was gone. And then you had the draft. And then you have the weekend leading up to free agency starting on Monday. And it became very apparent and then Sunday official that the Sabres were buying out Jeff Skinner. I was on board with it. Okay with losing a player, but more than anything else, I was on board with losing Jeff Skinner because I thought that it was a chess move that Kevyn Adams was making that was going to lead to a bigger chess move. And it just didn't happen. It hasn't happened. I shouldn't say it's not going to happen. That's premature. I mean, I'm going to be somewhat chill right now and keep things in perspective to an extent because we are quite literally just one day now in the NHL free agency. The offseason is not over. I know that, and I don't need you to tell me that. I already know that shit, I promise you. But hasn't happened yet. And it reminds me a lot of how things played out with the Bills and Stefan Diggs. Now, the Bills are a different story because the Bills have been winning now for several years. The Bills have been in the playoffs. The Bills have won some playoff games in recent years. So they buy some goodwill from fans. They buy some trust. They buy some belief in the general manager and in the organization that they're making the right move, even if you don't like the move and even if you don't agree with it. The Sabres have earned zero goodwill. The Bills have earned some goodwill. But anyway, going back to Stefan Diggs. He got traded. I still remember the day. It was April, actually. It's April 3rd, April 4th, but it was one of those 2 days. Stefan Diggs gets traded. And at the time, and I like Stefan Diggs. I've been a Stefan Diggs supporter, and I still hope he goes to Houston, and I hope he plays well. But anyway, I was on board with the trade because I'm like, wow, they're trading this guy. He's still under contract. They got to pay him $31 million, whether he plays there or not. And they're trading him. They're going to eat $3 more extra $1 million. I'm like, okay. Well, they're getting rid of Stefan Diggs because that's a chess move by our guy, Brandon Beane. And he's got something bigger up his sleeve. That's what I was thinking. That's why I was so on board with the Stefan Diggs trade at the time. I'm like, well, an upgrade must be coming, right? A veteran upgrade. Maybe Brandon Ayuk. Maybe a T. Higgins type move. But no. Traded Stefan Diggs. And they drafted a wide receiver in the beginning of round 2. That, to be completely honest with you, his size, his skill set, at this point, I think he's more of a Gabe Davis replacement than a Stefan Diggs replacement, at least early on in his career anyway. But they drafted somebody and they signed mid, and I'm being kind of generous there, mid at best free agents, veteran guys like MVS and Chase Claypool. So I look back at the Stefan Diggs trade, and I remember I went through a period. I'm like, well, what the hell? That's what you're going to do? You're just drafting Coleman, who, again, he's your Gabe Davis replacement probably anyway. And I know they got Samuel, but still, you sign MVS and Chase Claypool, and they signed, by the way, Curtis Samuel was a Buffalo Bill before Stefan got traded. But anyway, post Stefan, your additions are MVS and Chase Claypool. I'm like, shit, man, you may as well just held on for Stefan Diggs for another year, right? But again, at least the Bills have earned some trust and some goodwill from us because of success. Sabres ain't earned that shit at all. So when the Sabres announced that they were buying out Skinner, I was like ready to wager money that, okay, well, Kevyn Adams has got a trade up his sleeve, or he's got a shocking free agent deal in place with someone that we're not expecting. And instead, it's just meh. It's just meh. This team is not better on paper than they, well, hold on. I got to be careful. And again, no script here. I'm kind of just winging this. Kevyn Adams spoke late on Monday and spoke very highly of this roster, pretty much saying that materially, this is a better team than it was a couple days ago. And I don't believe that shit. I don't. And that's not even, look, I'm not going to sit here and poo-poo on the guys that they brought in on Monday. That's not really what I'm angry about. I don't hate, per se, any of the additions that they made to this roster. It's still the big picture, the big splash, the big Jeff Skinner replacement. You're gonna get jettison a goal scorer who doesn't do anything else, who's declining, but still can put the puck in the net. And you're not going to bring in somebody who can really put the puck in the net. And it is bothersome to me. And again, this is not to shit all over who the Sabres actually added, which what I want to do real quick is I'm actually going to take a quick break, come back, and I do got some thoughts on who they added. I got some thoughts on Jeff Skinner, where he went. I got some thoughts on what they didn't do. And I got a couple of big picture thoughts right now, bottom line thoughts when it comes to the Buffalo Sabres. And I can tell right now as I'm going, the calmness that I had in the first half of this episode was starting to lose it. I'm starting to get pretty pissed off. Anyway, see what happens when I get back from this break. Back here on the solo tip today, reviewing a busy but kind of like quantity over quality, as far as I'm concerned, day one of the Buffalo Sabres in the NHL free agency. As for who they added. All right. So I guess the big, and I say this almost sarcastically, but the splashiest move that they made was adding a forward, Jason Zucker, 1 year, $5 million. I ain't going to lie to you. And look, I'm also going to say this too. I am not, and I don't try to pretend I am. If you're a regular on this show, I hope you understand this. I don't sit there and try to break down a bunch of guys that I don't know well. I follow the Sabres as closely as I possibly can, and I try to follow the league, but I don't follow the league nowhere near on the same level, say, like with the NFL. I feel like with the NFL, you could put 31 teams on the board, and to some extent, I feel informed and qualified enough to talk about several players. I ain't going to sit here in front and lie to you all and try to pretend that I know a lot about some of these additions that the Buffalo Sabres made. My knowledge of them, for the most part, is pretty minimal. I do spend a lot of time looking up numbers. I have a handful of people, both locally and nationally, that I put a lot of faith and a lot of trust in, and I read what they got to say. And that's kind of how I formulate my opinions about a lot of players around the league that aren't Buffalo Sabres that I don't get to see close up myself. But anyway, as far as Jason Zucker, dude's 32 years old, 14 goals between Nashville and Arizona last year. He scored 27 goals 2 years ago in Pittsburgh. He had 3 straight years of at least 21 goals, but that was all the way back in 2018, 2019. That's when that streak ended. It sounds to me right now like he is for sure a top 9 forward and potentially could be a top 6 forward. And if he's a top 9 forward, if he's on that third line, I can live with that. That's okay. But man, if he's on that second line, which would probably be him or Benson, I mean, you're going to have Dylan Cousins, you're going to have Jack Quinn, and then it's probably either Zucker or Benson, and whoever's not on that second is probably on the third line. So, again, he's a guy. He's a guy. That's the kind of player you're going to get, and that's what I'm talking about when I say nobody wants to come to Buffalo. Which, by the way, Kevin Adams has been talking about this for years now. I want guys that want to be here. Well, guess what? You're shit out of luck because most of these players don't want to be here. And if they want to be here, you know why they want to be here? Because you're giving them 1 year, $5 million for a guy who probably was worth maybe half of that. That's what the reality is. But anyway, he's probably to this point, the big ticket. I can't believe I'm saying that about freaking Jason Zucker, but that's what he is. He's the biggest addition to this point. Also, they signed a center, Sam Lafferty, 2 years. The only guy of all the people they signed on Monday, they got more than 1 year. 2-year guy, $2 million per, 13 goals, 24 points in 79 games with the Vancouver Canucks last year. 13 goals is his career high. He's 29 years old. Some players in the Sabres organization, not players, some people in the Sabres organization, very familiar with him. Associate GM Jason Camarnos was with him in Pittsburgh during his time. So, which was like 2019 to 2021. he seems by all accounts, from what I've seen, and by the way, this is Lafferty's fifth team at this point of his career. He's fine for a fourth line center, and it seems to be that's what he's going to be. Which, by the way, as things stand right now, Peyton Krebs, who had 4 goals last year, tried to play some third line center, didn't really look great doing it as of right now today. Peyton Krebs is your third line center. You want to talk about something that needs to change? Sorry, I'm going off the rails here. Supposed to be talking about the new people. Peyton Krebs is your third line center, though, as things stand right now. I hate that. I hate it. But anyway, Lafferty seems to be a pretty good guy to have there on the fourth line as a center. And the Sabres, like I said, they pretty much redid they revamped that fourth line for sure. So Lafferty's going to be playing center. They acquired a forward, Nicholas Aube-Kubel from Washington on Monday. He was a free agent signing, 1 year, $1.5 million. Dude's 28 years old. Doesn't put the puck in the net. 6 goals, 16 points in 60 games this year, but he's a good checker. He's fast. Like Lafferty, Buffalo, this becomes his 5th team since entering the NHL in 2018. And I'll tell you, when the Sabres signed him, I went on YouTube and I instantly started trying to find some highlights or stuff about him. And the first thing I see, which I've actually remembered once I saw it, February 2023, Washington played in Buffalo, and the Sabres put a kind of a smack on him, beat the shit out of him, 6-3. Anyway, he dropped the gloves and squared off with Sabres forward Jack Quinn. Kind of got the better of him, too. So I don't want to say he whooped his ass, but definitely got the better of old Jack Quinn there. Anyway, I got no problem with him as a fourth line guy. And then, of course, they traded that second round pick on Saturday for Beck Malenstein. So Malenstein, Lafferty, and Aube-Kubel become your fourth line. I'm good with that. I truly am. I got no beef with that, man. I got no beef with that. And again, even Zucker, if he's no higher than a third liner, if that's what he is on the team and not a second liner, I'm all right with that. So, in essence, those 4 guys, 3 forwards signed today and 1 that they traded for over the weekend. That's 4 guys. You're going to skate 4 lines, 12 forwards. The Sabres have redone 33%. Actually, well, let me do it. Jesus, I really suck at math, don't I, man? 25% of their forward line they've redone in the last 3 days. And they're all the bottom of the depth chart. Well, let's hope that they're the bottom of the depth chart. So you can't say what you want about Kevin Adams in this organization right now, but one thing you can't say is that they're not doing anything. Because I've seen a lot of bitching about the Sabres on Monday on social media, specifically Twitter X. And I was probably leading the brigade because I was bitching and whining an awful lot. Let's just be real clear about that. But the one thing I'm not going to say is that the Sabres aren't doing anything. They're doing plenty. They're just doing plenty of shit that most people don't give a shit about, because a lot of people are going to say this is not going to make this team. It's certainly not going to put them over the hump. They might have a little more depth than they did last year. Arguably, they got a better fourth line now than they did last year. But is that going to get them over the hump? Think not. Anyway, they also added a goalie, Felix Sandstrom from Philly. Not going to get panicked about this one. This is a Rochester netminder next year. 26 starts in the NHL. Absolute disastrous stats anyway. 3.66 goals against and only an 8.80 save percentage. 26 starts, and his record is 4-18-4 in them. So hashtag stay well, Devin Levi, and especially UPL. Then they also brought back Jacob Bryson, 1-year deal, and they added a defenseman to the mix, probably be that 8th defenseman, Dennis Gilbert. Buffalo kid, actually, went to St. Joe's High School, so pretty cool story there. So that's who the Sabres have actually added to this point. In terms of former Sabres, now former Sabres anyway, Eric Comrie went back to Winnipeg. He signed with them. Sam Reinhart re-signed with Florida, 8-year deal. Brandon Montour, good for Brandon Montour, by the way. Went to Seattle, parlayed a cup and a strong performance with Florida into a 7-year, like around $7 million or so per deal with the Seattle Kraken. I still think it's fucking hilarious that when Ralph Kruger was the head coach of his team, Brandon Montour played some serious minutes on the fourth line right wing. You gotta be fucking kidding me. Oh, this organization. Tyson Jost went to Carolina, $775K. Zemgus Girgensson, an interesting player here. He went to Tampa, 3 years, only $850,000 per, which I got to tell you, man, Kevin Adams said on Monday that they had an offer on the table to Girgensson's. I find that really hard to believe. Or either that or dude really, really wanted out of here, man, wanted to go play for a contender. Because I can't imagine the Sabres offered him less or anything less, even close to less than $850K. But he goes to Tampa, 3 years, good for him. And then, of course, the big one, Jeff Skinner gets bought out on Sunday. On Monday, he is signing with the Stanley Cup runner-ups, the Western Conference champions, Edmonton Oilers. 1 year, $3 million. You can positively put him down for 25 to 30 goals minimum, which, by the way, it's already, I can't remember who it was from Edmonton, but he's going to be a top 6 guy on this team. They said that. So you can mark him down for A, 25 to 30 goals, and B, you could probably mark him down for the Edmonton Oilers being in the Western Conference final against Casey Middlestat and the Colorado Avalanche. Colorado, Edmonton, book it. That is your Western Conference final because one of them are going to be the latest former Buffalo Sabre to go on and probably win a freaking Stanley Cup. But anyway, those are former Sabres that are gone. Not going to get into a lot of the players, big name players around the league that went elsewhere. Guys that were like, some of us like fantasize a little bit about, like Steven Stamkos especially. He goes to Nashville. Tyler Toffoli, a guy who Chad DiDomenicis on the show yesterday was really talking up. He went to San Jose 4 years at $6 million per. Tyler Bertuzzi to Chicago 4 years at $5.5 million per. Which, by the way, you look at the Sabres cap situation. Any of these guys, if the Sabres were good enough or interested enough to want to draw somebody like them, the Sabres have had and still have the cap room again. Players like that just ain't going to come here. Look, folks, I'm not going to be here more than another few minutes, but I want to say this. It as mad as I am, as mad as a lot of fans are right now, it's not out of the realm of possibility that the Buffalo Sabres could still be a good hockey team this year. It's not out of the realm of the possibilities that the Buffalo Sabres, this could be the year that they break the playoff drought. It could happen. The Sabres could be good still. Right now, if the Sabres don't do another goddamn thing for the rest of the summer and we lose our minds that they still got all this cap space and that they didn't go out and they didn't get a true third line center, that they didn't go out and get a true top 6 forward, it's still conceivable that this team could be good and even a playoff team in 2024, 2025. They just need an awful lot of shit from these incumbents to happen. And it's got to happen almost cohesively. Like, not just some of this stuff needs to happen, like almost all of it needs to happen. Tage Thompson needs to be 2 years ago, Tage Thompson, where he was one of the best snipers in the NHL. Ditto for Alex Tuch. And that especially goes true for Dylan Cousins, who just simply wasn't that good last year. He got hurt in a fight, and he just didn't seem like he was the same player. But Tage Thompson's got to be a superstar. Alex Tuch has to be a legit, true first-line winger, and Dylan Cousins needs to be one hell of a second-line center. They're capable of that. I'm not going to sit here and say that they're not capable of that. We've seen it. They got to be the same guys that they were 2 years ago. And speaking of, Jack Quinn, he needs to build off what we saw from him 2 years ago. Saw some of it last year, but he's got to stay healthy. Got hurt twice last year. He's got to stay healthy. So they need a healthy Jack Quinn. They need J.J. Peterka to be, at a minimum, as good as he was last year. Last year, he was good enough to play himself into that top line with Tuch and Tage Thompson near the end of the year. Kind of started the the Jeff Skinner free fall. JJ Bertucker's got to be, at a minimum, as good as he was last year. Zach Benson, a pretty solid rookie season for an 18-year-old who gets drafted and gets straight to the NHL. Some really good moments last year. He's got to build off a very promising rookie season. While those forwards do that, they're good. I mean, this was a team 2 years ago that almost made the playoffs. And the reason why they almost made the playoffs 2 years ago is because they scored a lot of freaking goals. They scored a lot of goals. Last year, not so much. And the power play sucked ass last year. But 2 years ago, this was a lethal offensive team. And those guys need to be lethal. Because they're not, at least as things stand right now, they're not going out and getting another big name scorer. In fact, they lost Jeff Skinner, who does, if nothing else, score goals. But then you look at the blue line, man. Owen Power has got to take that next step. You see the talent there on many nights, but he's got to become more consistent, and that's what it's going to be. Taking the next step for Owen Power is to be more consistent. Mateus Samuelsson, dude's got to stay healthy. The Sabres gave him a long, big-ass contract. He can't stay healthy. He's got to be healthy. And, the defense, again, Samuelsson stays healthy. Power takes that next step in terms of consistency. These young guys, well, Alex Tuck's not that young, but most of these guys are younger guys on offense. They get back to what they were kind of 2 years ago. And you need, maybe more than anything else, you need second half of the season UPL to be like that all next year. And Devin Levi's going to get plenty of opportunity. He's the number 2 this year. Not no starting in Rochester. He needs to get work. He's going to be in Buffalo night 1. He's going to be either the 2 or the 1B, depending on how you look at it. But that tandem, whether it's UPL, whether it's Levi, and we sure as shit have seen some promise from Devin Levi. We saw it during that, I think it was a 7-game stretch or whatever it was, when he first came into the league, not last year, the year before. So anyway, the talent's there. You've seen it before. But they got to have really good goaltending. And then last but not least, probably maybe the most important thing is Lindy Ruff. Lindy Ruff's got to get the most out of his core. And I'll tell you, a lot of whiffs, a lot of things that need to happen. But the one thing I think Sabres fans, if you're trying to sell fans on this team, I think the biggest selling point, the most credible selling point would be Lindy Ruff. Because he's done it before. He's won. He's won before. He's kind of, like I said, with the Bills, you kind of earn, Brandon Beane has earned that belief, that trust. I think Lindy Ruff, to some extent, has earned belief and trust in this organization and his players, and of course, as well as the fans. But that's how this team's going to be good. At the end of the day, you could be like, all right, well, we added a new fourth line, and we got a guy who might be something at as a third liner. And I really hope that's all he is. And then you got Greenway, who I think could be a pretty solid third liner. And those guys got to step up, man. Dylan Cousins, Tage Thompson, Alex Tuck, Peterka, and Quinn, they got to be even better. That's what it's going to take. That's what it's going to take. Bottom line here as we get out of here, a couple bottom line takes that I have. I don't hate the moves that they made. I truly do. I get it to an extent. I promise you I do. I get it. They redid the fourth line. Great. Not a bad thing. I already told you how I feel about Jason Zucker. Blah. Possibly, again, decent third liner, okay. Top 6 guy, nah. Nope. Not interested. In fact, I look at him 1 year, $5 million, and within minutes of him signing, I'm thinking in my mind, because I'm kind of keeping Sabres rejected lines in my mind right now as these moves are happening. And I'm like, well, that's going to be harder for Kulik to make this roster. It's going to be harder for Savoy to make this roster. And I look at Zucker, 1 year, $5 million. And honestly, I kind of see him as a guy right now that the Sabres give some money to and they try to flip him. like near the trade deadline. Try to get something back for him, a draft pick or whatever. Because I see a guy like Kulik or Savoy, they might not be up with the Sabres now early in the season, and maybe a little more seasoning and time in Rochester will have them ready to come up to the parent club at some point during the regular season, and maybe somebody like Zucker becomes expendable at that point. But regardless, here's the thing. The Sabres cannot be done right now. Cannot be done. Kevyn Adams sounded on Monday, and this pissed me off. I'm happy with this roster, which is kind of fucking ridiculous considering, Thursday and Friday's in Vegas pretty much whining that they can't get a trade done, that he wants a trade, but you got to have two to tangle. The first pick's on the table, yada, 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 this and that, no trades. And he's whining about it. It seemed to me, that's the way I interpreted it a couple of days ago. And now he's satisfied. He's almost gloating about this roster that he has. Are you freaking kidding me? That at a bare minimum right now, they need to make a trade because there's no, again, free agency was over by 4:00 on Monday. Ain't nobody out there that's going to move any kind of needle. So it's got to come via trade. They need to make a trade. I don't know for who. I'm not a hockey expert. Don't try to pretend I am, but they got to get somebody, man. They got to get a top 6 guy. Straight up, they got to get a third line center. Straight up. They have to. They still got a glaring need. They need another goal scorer in this lineup in that top 6. And I don't give a shit how much Kevyn Adams says he loves this roster right now, because I think he's full of shit. I think he's lying to himself, let alone the fans too right now. They got to figure something out. They got to, because if they don't, they still got a ton of cap room. Like they came into this process second in the league in cap money. They have a really good, or at least promising, I should say, young core on this team. They have a established winning head coach, and they still cannot attract free agents to this organization, man. They got a lot of cap room. Got to figure shit out. They got to spend more towards the cap. If they go into this season, not even like in the ballpark of being close to the cap, and they're going to say, and I know Kevyn Adams has already talked about, they want to have money put away to extend other players, yada, yada, yada. Fine. Look, if this team goes into the season with $10, $12 million or more in salary cap space, I think it's fair to seriously question if this is an organization that's even serious about winning. Seriously. I mean, I don't give a shit what Kevyn Adams says. Actions speak louder than words, and how much he praises Terry Bagula and his commitment to winning. Yeah. I get it. Make some moves, man. Make some moves. You got a pipeline, which, by the way, I was talking about, the good things with the Sabres organization. Good young core, a winning head coach, cap room. You also have arguably one of, maybe even the best pipeline in the league. So you got prospects up the ass to trade. You got tons of cap room. You better find a way to get something done. Today was about the bottom part of the forward depth, and that's fine. It might be better than last year, very well might be better than last year. But if this team is going to take a step, they need to get at least one, if not two, more good players. They're going to put the puck in the net and help them. Anyway, that's all I got for a really, really late Monday taping. I'm going to be back. I think we're doing a pod bag, like I said, tomorrow. A lot